What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Fourth Pres Youth at Home as we continue our series going into Martin Luther King weekend on altruism based on his sermon on being a good neighbor as we examine Luke chapter 10, verse 29. I'm so excited to see what God has planned for the life of our youth program, all of Fourth Pres, and especially all of your lives at home. If you would like to stay up to date with all the happenings of the youth at Fourth Presbyterian Church here in Greenville, South Carolina, please email me at chris@fourthpres.com to be added to the weekly Tuesday e-blast. You may also follow us on Instagram at Fourth Pres Youth. And as we continue into week 2 of our altruism lesson for Martin Luther King Day weekend, let's reflect on week 1 as the Merriam-Webster Dictionary describes altruism as an unselfish regard for or devotion to the welfare of others. And we broke down altruism into 3 different parts. And the first part we examined in week 1, and we will continue with the next 2 in this lesson here. But last week we looked at universal altruism. And in that we discovered that the story of the Good Samaritan, that a priest passed by a beaten man but did not stop. And another man passed by and also chose not to stop. But a man of another race than the beaten man decided to stop, administer aid, take him to an inn, and pay for his food and any additional needs that he may have had. And Jesus said this was the good man, the great man, because he had the capacity to be concerned for the other man, his brother, his neighbor. The Good Samaritan saw the beaten man as his brother and as his neighbor first before he saw him as a man of another race, religion, or group. That was universal altruism. And this week we will also look at dangerous and excessive altruism and how those fit into our lives and not just the parable that Jesus spoke of that day. Now, going into dangerous altruism, the Good Samaritan also possessed this attribute of dangerous altruism. We heard last week about how dangerous and frightening the road from Jerusalem to Jericho really was. This man risked his life to save his brother, whom he did not even know. Now let's give the priest that passed by the benefit of the doubt that we talked about last week and say that he had that Jericho Road Improvement Union organization meeting to get to as an excuse to keep on going without helping the poor beaten man. Because as we know, fixing problems from a very casual source always seems to get the job done, right? This Good Samaritan took the problem head on. He was not afraid of what would happen to himself, or at least he knew that this man's life was more than worth the risk of being robbed himself. He was overcome with a calling to do good for this beaten man despite the risk of the same thing happening to him. Now, Reverend Martin Luther King said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." The true neighbor, led by God's steadfast love, will risk their position, their prestige, their social standing, and even their own life for the welfare of others. They will raise some beaten and bruised brother or sister to a higher and more noble life. That's dangerous altruism. I know that sounds pretty intimidating, but for the sake of this lesson and the story and the point that Reverend King was trying to make, I think that's something that maybe we could take into consideration in our lives. Willing to risk our social standing or our prestige or our position to help out the worthiness of our brother, our neighbor, our sister. Now, the Samaritan also possessed excessive altruism. He used his own hands to bound the wounds of the man and then set him on his own beast, his own donkey. He didn't even have a horse. In today's world, it would have been easier to simply call an ambulance and let the professionals take care of the rest if someone were to even do that much. You see, true altruism is more than just the ability to pity. It is the capacity to sympathize. Pity represents little more than an impersonal concern that leads to writing a check or typing a hashtag to a cause and then never really truly making connections. True sympathy is the personal concern that demands the giving of one's own soul. Sympathy grows out of a concern for a particularly needy human being who lies at life's side road clinging to survival. A good neighbor concerns inner attitudes, genuine person-to-person relationships, and expressions of compassion to their commitment of an inner law written in one's heart by the hand of God. It is a struggle to fight our inner evils, to just let somebody else step in. That'd be so much easier than going in and doing the work ourselves. So often we think that someone else will take care of the problem. Someone else will fix that. I've got things to do. That is an evil that has clearly had a grip on mankind for thousands of years. And we learn this through God's objective love, that nothing else can produce such unalloyed compassion, such genuine love, and such thorough altruism. Now we're going to end today's lesson the same way that MLK ended his sermon on being a good neighbor. And Reverend King went on to say, "More than ever before, my friends, men of all races and nations are today challenged to be neighborly. The call for a worldwide good neighbor policy is more than an epiphermal shibboleth. It is a call to a way of life that will transform our imminent cosmic elegy into a psalm of creative fulfillment. No longer can we afford the luxury of passing by on the other side. Such folly was once called moral failure. Today it will lead to universal suicide. We cannot long survive spiritually separated in a world that is geographically together. In the final analysis, I must not ignore the wounded man on life's Jericho road, because he is part of me and I am part of him. His agony diminishes me, and his salvation enlarges me. In our quest to make neighborly love a reality, we have, in addition to the inspiring example of the Good Samaritan, the magnanimous life of our Christ to guide us. His altruism was universal, for he thought of all men, even publicans and sinners, as brothers. His altruism was dangerous, for he willingly traveled hazardous roads in a cause that he knew was right. And his altruism was excessive, for he chose to die in Calvary, history's most magnificent expression of obedience to the unenforceable. I hope that we can reflect on last week's lesson of universal altruism and this week's lessons on dangerous and excessive altruism, and look to where we can incorporate those characteristics into our daily lives, whether it be at home with a sibling that just seems to be nagging you all the time, or with your parents that constantly want you to do your chores and help out around the house, or at school with all sorts of different pulls from different groups of friends, or out in the world and society where clearly we could use more people with altruism in their hearts. And in the comment section of this video, you'll see a couple talking points, some questions to kind of help you think. And I hope that you can meditate on this and on last week and this week's lesson. You can do a mini small group at home away from the church. And I hope that you go forward thinking about altruism as you go throughout your life. And I hope that we are all guided by God's steadfast love, His grace, and His mercy, and that we trust that it will take us to places that we could even imagine. All right, I'll see y'all soon.